I'm Sheryl Fields Bogan. Today is June 4th. I'm interviewing Mrs. Wisch, and it's June 4th, 2010. And let me tell you how delighted I am to see you today, make your acquaintance, and I'm looking
You
forward.
can call me Renee.
Renee, thank you, thank you. Let's go start at the very beginning and tell me a little bit, please, about your parents and where they came from.
My parents both came from Lithuania, and the rest of my family were probably killed in the Holocaust. But my mother did come over, and her 3 brothers, and several aunts, and an uncle, and that was the extent of my mother's family.
And when did your mother come to the United States?
Oh, I don't know exactly, but she used to say she was the biggest girl in the first grade. So she was probably about 16, I would think.
About 16 when she came. And
yeah.
Where did she come to, do you know?
To this aunt's house, who was the matriarch of our family in Boston.
In Boston?
Mm-hmm.
To an aunt's house.
And you don't need her name.
I'd like your mother's name.
My mother's name was Gertrude Reagan. Her maiden name was Baltimore. It's probably, when they came over, was Butchermovich, at the port, but after the rest of them were all Baltimores.
And so your mother was raised then in Boston?
No.
Baltimore?
No, my mother was raised in Europe.
Oh, in Europe?
In Lithuania.
In Lithuania, but so she was...
In Meritz. It's called Meritz.
Yes, okay, and then, but she was 16.
About 16.
When she came to Boston.
Right.
Okay. And your father?
My father was Israel. He died in 1930. May 5th. And my mother was devastated. She went through solid black mourning for about 6 years.
So he came from Lithuania to Israel.
No, Boston.
Oh, to his name. Oh, to Boston.
His
name was.
My father's name was Israel.
Was Israel. I'm sorry, I misheard.
Yeah.
And how did your parents meet?
I think they met. She was engaged with someone else, and they met out on the beach with a group of friends. And that engagement was broken. And it was romance. And my father, I remember visiting him in the hospital. He had leukemia, and I could smell the antiseptic in the hall. I remember going to the swan boats with him. And I remember going to the movies and seeing a movie called Ramona with Loretta Young.
How old were you when he passed away?
7.
And what did your father do?
He had a meat company called Star Beef Company at 38 North Street, Boston, but it's no longer there. He had one of the first cars called a Willie's Knight. We looked it up on the computer. It was made in 1937, I think. Which was amazing, because I never found it. And we found his, I don't remember the date, but he's listed when he came into Ellis Island. And he came in with the name of Israel Reagan.
And tell me, if you will, a little bit about your childhood and where you were born.
I was born in Dorchester, Mass. In a house. My brother said he saw a black cat. He knew he had a sister.
So you have one older brother.
Right.
And how many? Did you have younger siblings?
No.
The 2 of you.
Just the 2 of us. 4 years and 2 weeks difference.
And do you mind telling me what year you were born?
I'm 87.
Isn't that wonderful?
I'll be 88 in August, please God.
And what's your exact birthday?
August 18th, 1922.
18th, 1922. Wonderful. So you were born in Massachusetts, and were you raised there? Yes.
Until I married.
And what was it like growing up
Well,
in your community?
It was an all-Jewish community. Roxbury was ghetto.
Uh-huh.
And it was great. You know, my mother struggled. My mother had a very, very hard time. She was a peddler. You know what a peddler is?
And what did she peddle?
Well, she sold a dress to somebody for $4 and then went to buy it and then would walk 2-3 miles to collect $1.
Mm-hmm.
She worked very hard.
Did you have other family in the area?
There's an aunt.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. She was the matriarch of the family.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever happened with her. From the high holidays, we went, you know, they had a what you call where the women sit upstairs, the men downstairs.
Is it called Mencia?
Something like that. Well, we weren't members ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So I never really had any Jewish education.
Did you go to the public school?
I did. I graduated high school. That's as far as I went.
And your brother?
He may have had a year or two, but he had. We were really in strange circumstances.
Did you or your brother work when you were children?
I may have babysat and made 25 cents an hour or something. But I can't complain.
And what was the Jewish community like? A big Jewish community. Mm-hmm.
Big.
Were you active with Jewish organizations?
Yeah, I belonged to the Y.
Mm-hmm.
Jewish groups, girls. Our group was called the Eminons, which meant no name. Backwards.
Okay.
And we lived in a bit poor on Humboldt Avenue, right adjacent to Franklin Park, and we could go coasting there. And the YMHA was on the corner, so we could go to day camp there.
And were you in an apartment or a house or?
Never. Well, when my father died, we lived in a 3-story. But then we moved into apartments.
Mm-hmm. And how did you and your mother and brother celebrate the Jewish holidays?
My mother was very religious. We had no lights in the house on Yom Kippur. And she used to salt her chickens, kosher them.
Now, the meat business that your father had, was that a kosher meat business? No. Mm-hmm.
It was not.
Did your family attend synagogue? You said at the holidays.
With the sound.
Mm-hmm.
With the sound, we never had membership in any place until I married.
So you graduated from high school.
Right.
And what happened next?
I went to.
Could you speak a little louder?
Okay.
I know it's hard.
I graduated from Memorial High School in 1940.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went to Clerical School. We called it Boston Academy to give it a prestigious name on Warren Street.
I'm sure that was something that young ladies did at the time.
And when the years passed, my mother was always very sick, very ill. She'd had about 5 cancers.
Oh my goodness.
And she struggled. She struggled, and she would never remarry because she didn't want to give us a stepfather. And she was a good-looking woman and had opportunities. And struggled really, really worked hard.
That's a hard, a difficult memory, it sounds like, for you to think about the struggling that your mother went through.
I appreciate her.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate her.
So you went to clerical school, and how many years did you go to clerical school?
I don't remember. I know my first job, I worked for a real estate company, and I made $5 a week.
$5 a week.
And he was a friend of the family that did us a favor and gave me the job.
Uh-huh.
And I had to pay bus fare, streetcar, you know, the L out of that.
So you worked for, and what kind of business was that you worked in? Do you remember?
I think probably real estate something.
Uh-huh. Do you remember how long you were there?
Well, not very long.
Uh-huh.
Then I worked for that's because the sub's older. But I worked for a Green Tree Publishing Company. I interviewed for many jobs. I couldn't get a job, and this man, Jewish man, gave me a job.
Why don't we stop for just 1 minute?
It's on pause.
Okay.
When you talk louder, it's so wonderful.
Okay. When we paused for a moment, you were just starting to tell me, and I asked you to please stop, you were talking about your childhood friends and about dating.
I did not date a lot
Uh-huh.
because I was heavy.
Okay. Uh-huh. But you had a big group of girlfriends.
Girlfriends.
Yes.
In
And
fact, I still have one left in Boston who owns the big New England bookmobile
oh, okay.
that services the colleges and so forth.
It's wonderful to have a childhood friend. Before we paused, you were telling me that you served in several different clerical positions in your second one.
Oh yeah, the second one. One of the ones I interviewed for a job at a mail house, and I wasn't fast enough. But what I did learn there was how to insert envelopes. You open the flaps, wet them, and just insert them, and then just, close the envelope.
So that was a good skill to learn.
That was something, That was advancement at that point. My next job, I worked for a publishing company, Green Tree, owned by a Jewish man, and he was dictating to me, and I corrected him, his grammar. And he said, when you don't correct me, when you sit in this chair, that's okay. You can go get your check.
Okay.
He fired me.
So he fired you. How did you feel about that?
Well, I'm sure I was upset.
Uh-huh.
You would be upset.
Of course. I mean, you were probably a very young woman, and
I was young. But I was lucky. I spent time with my relatives in Connecticut. My mother's brothers worked very good to her and helped her. She'd been so sick. And we lived in Middletown. I'll never forget. I don't know. But I remember one Christmas Eve, and I don't remember why, but she didn't buy me a Christmas present. And I made her go out in the ice and snow and walk up to Western Auto to buy me a paint set.
And this was when you were a child. Uh-huh. And so you celebrated Christmas.
I don't think we did,
Uh-huh.
but my neighbors did.
Uh-huh. It would have been under understandable if you did. If
My
you-
neighbors did. We never belonged to a congregation, ever. When we went to Connecticut, lived in Connecticut, we went with my uncle.
So you moved to Connecticut after you graduated high school?
Oh no,
No, when you
I
were.
graduated grammar school.
Uh-huh.
And before that I went to, lived in Dorchester, and I went to school in Dorchester. And then at some point we moved back, and I went to a school on Brookwood Street.
What was the name of the high school where you graduated?
High school,
Mhm.
Roxbury Memorial High School for Girls,
So-
1940,
1940. And then how did you meet your husband?
at the JWB.
Now, what is
USO.
USO?
Yeah.
Okay. And what year was that?
I don't know, maybe 45, 44.
And how old were you when you met?
20, probably. But when I saw him, I knew he was the man for me.
Did you say the minute you saw him?
I was sitting there, I was, you know, the USO, at the USO they had junior hostesses.
Uh-huh.
And that would come and dance with the servicemen. And this one was at 17 Commonwealth Avenue. And I would go and be part of the group of young women that would come. They would bring the soldiers in from the camps, you know, from the different forts. And we had different parties there, formals and lots of good times. And I dated some of the boys from there. But he walked into the USO, and I was sitting in the corner, and he walked over to the table and we started chatting. As a matter of fact, he was the one that gave me the name of Irene, because my name was Gladys Irene. And I hate the name Gladys.
And did you tell him that?
I always did, because I never liked it, because every time I thought of Gladys, it reminded me of Happy Ass.
Oh,
Really,
okay.
that's the truth. He named me Rainey.
And it stuck.
It stuck.
Uh-huh. And tell me your husband's name?
Jimmy Wisch, but his real name is Jessert Aaron Wisch.
And where was he from?
Brooklyn.
From Brooklyn. And he was in the service, and what was he doing?
Well, he went into the service for Mineral Wells, and he was stationed on a Liberty ship. And he traveled back and forth to France. And of course then, you know, the boys were dealing in black market.
Oh, the servicemen were. And what were they doing with the black market?
Selling stuff too.
Uh,
You know,
What kind of stuff?
jeans, clothing,
Mm-hmm.
anything they could get.
They would take with them and sell it overseas.
Yeah.
So you all met and at a USO, and then what happened next?
It was a quick romance. We met on September 5th. We married on March 19th.
And where were you married?
Well, the first time I was married at the county courthouse in Fort Worth.
In Fort Worth. Now, why?
By a one-legged judge.
By a what?
One-legged judge.
A one-legged judge.
Judge Gus Brown. The courthouse is still there.
And how did you end up in Fort Worth?
With Jimmy.
Yes, but Jimmy was transferred, or
His mother was there,
oh, okay,
and his brother. It was the Depression.
okay, because
And Chet couldn't get a job in New York because he was Jewish. They weren't hiring Jews. He got a job with a photo reflex studio here.
This is Jimmy's brother?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Well, yeah, brother.
Mm-hmm. So they moved from Brooklyn to New York. I mean, from Brooklyn to Fort Worth.
Right.
Uh-huh.
And Chet had a job with the Motor Reflex. Then it was wartime, and both my mother-in-law and Chet got jobs at the aircraft factory. And Jimmy was in the service.
And so you moved to Fort Worth to marry Jimmy, and you married on March 19th while he was in the service, and
Yeah.
he was still in the service
Yeah.
then. Where did you all live? Did you live with his mother?
We did.
Mm-hmm.
For a very short time. She said there were no kitchen is big enough for 2 cooks.
Okay.
Our first apartment was, I thought it was heaven. Had a bed that came out of the wall.
Uh-huh.
No air conditioning. We used to put a pot of water with some ice in it to cool it. Leaky roof. We had a telephone drum for a table, and, coffee table. And at that time, Jimmy had a theater group too. And we stayed there. We brought out Linda home from the hospital there, and at that time, we lived on this 3rd floor. My mother said the first time she came to Texas, she said, for this, you came 2,000 miles.
Was it hard for your mother to see you leave?
Oh my God, it was terrible.
Mm-hmm.
My mother was the type of a woman, there was no man in the world good enough for her daughter,
Mm-hmm.
or no woman good enough for her son.
Mm-hmm. But was she able to have a nice relationship with Jimmy after she got to know him?
Yeah.
So, how long were you married before Linda was born? Did you have a couple of years?
Maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And what year was Linda born?
Well, Linda's about 63 or 4
Okay.
now.
How many children did you have?
5.
5. And will you tell me their names?
Linda,
Mhm.
Steve, Judy, Susan, Sheryl. You want all their spouses?
Yes, please.
Okay, Linda was married, is divorced. She was married to Eli Davidson. She has 4 wonderful children.
And do they live where do they live?
3 live here, and Ethan lives in Portland. He's the youngest.
And Steve?
Steve's an attorney in Houston. He was divorced. He has 1 child. A wonderful second life. Miserable. I don't even want to go into the details of his first marriage. It's horrible.
Well, I'm happy that he's doing well now. I wonder if I knew him when I lived in Houston. And Judy?
Judy's single,
Mhm.
and she adopted a little boy from Russia,
Oh, how wonderful.
Jacob. And Sharon has 3 wonderful children and a marvelous husband. Do you know the Rays?
You mean the Jerry Ray?
Gerald, yeah.
Gerald?
Oh, did you know Gail Ray?
I don't think so.
Gerald and Gail were first cousins.
No, I don't, Gerald.
And tell me about Susan.
Susan was married, and she's divorced. And she graduated from Texas. So did Judy. Linda went to Stevens College, and then she got very sick, and she didn't continue.
Now, does Susan have children?
No,
No. Okay.
never.
So you were living in Fort Worth, and how long were you in Fort? Did you live in Fort Worth?
All my life.
All your life. So you moved to Dallas.
After Jenny, well, I lived in, Todd came to live with me right after Jimmy died. What's that, 9, 10 years. And he's been with me ever since.
This is one of your grandchildren.
No, Todd doesn't. He's not my child.
Oh, okay.
But he's like a child.
Like a child. Uh-huh.
He does everything. He signs my checks. He does everything.
How did you meet him?
He was working for my friend Helen Shapiro. Do you know Helen? She's related to the Lusky family.
The Minsky?
Luskys.
Luskys in Fort
Oh.
Worth. My
And Dallas too.
oh yes, in Dallas.
The
too.
Rohans.
My
Do you know the Rohan family?
Oh.
You know Terry?
Terry and Richard are best friends of my
Well,
son.
that's Terry and is Helen's granddaughter.
Wonderful family.
Yeah.
So you lived in Fort Worth until your husband died about
Right.
9 or 10 years ago.
Right.
You decided then, because most of your children were here in Dallas,
Right.
to move here.
Right.
Uh-huh.
Well, it made sense. I have, I don't have a lot of friends here. I really don't.
Well, most of your friends were from Fort Worth.
Right.
What was it like living in Fort Worth and raising your family?
Oh, wonderful.
Was it how big was the Jewish community in Fort Worth? Would you say?
Not big.
Not big.
10, 12,000.
Did the children?
Excuse me, I should talk louder.
Uh-huh.
10 or 12,000.
Uh-huh.
You want me to go back?
I think you're doing great.
Doing great.
And tell me a little bit about your Jewish life in Fort Worth.
We were members of both Bethel,
The Reform congregation.
right, and Shalom.
Was that conservative or Orthodox?
No, conservative.
Conservative.
And we were living across the street from the temple on Broadway in this old apartment. And Linda was born, and I told you what the apartment looked like with this. Anyway, we brought her home from the hospital then. We used to roll the paper by hand.
So you had started in the paper business.
Bernice and Sant, you know the Radens from Temple Emmanuel? Larry Steinberg and
Yes.
Joe.
Yes.
Bernice is their aunt.
Oh, Bernice Reed?
Bernice Raden.
Of course. I'm sorry.
Well, Bernice is my best friend.
R-A-D-E-N.
Yes,
Oh.
and my name was R-A-D-I-N. We were in the hospital together. We were roommates.
Yeah.
That's where we met.
She's fabulous. We need to do her review.
So
And if you want to know anything about me, ask Bernice.
okay. Well, that's
Bernice
She'll
was,
ask you.
Bernice was my mentor.
Really?
so you met. Did you meet when you were having your children in the hospital? Uh-huh.
She
And-
went out. You know, in those days, you stay 10 days.
Sure.
And she was going home the next day after I arrived. But we became good friends.
And
That's never changed.
so
But she was my mentor. She used to say to me, I used to do things I couldn't afford. I remember I bought Linda a little dotted Swiss dress, and I paid about $19 for it. And she said, Rainey, save your money. Wait till your children get older.
it's nice to have a friend like that who can be so honest with you.
Oh, and I'm sure you didn't know her family. Her mother, Roa Steinberg, was the first president of Fort Worth
So Jimmy left left the service, and what kind of job did he take?
He worked for the Railway Mail before he went in the service. So he was assured of a job when he came back. He had a secure job. And then when you remember, worked for the Railway Mail, they had a very prosperous profit plan.
So he was working for the Railway Mail, and you were just saying something a few minutes ago about rolling the paper. Did you take a job as well?
Oh yeah, I worked for the War Production Board.
The War Production Board.
Uh-huh.
What did you do?
I was a secretary.
Uh-huh. And so this was before Linda was born, or after Linda was born? Or both?
Both.
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 What kind of child care did you have for Linda?
My mother-in-law.
Uh-huh. So you, did you work as you raised all of the children?
Always.
Always worked.
Always worked. But I always worked on the post.
Now tell me about the Post. When did you start? How did you start the Texas Jewish Post?
Jimmy was in the service on a ship. Jimmy was in the service on a ship. He was doing the movies and something. When he came back from the service, there was a young lady who lived, I met her in Fort Worth, but she had lived 2 blocks from me in Boston.
Oh.
And he and Jimmy decided to start the paper. He went ahead and did it without Jimmy. And then he came from a very wealthy family, the Brockman.
The Brockman
Oil.
family?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And his family were all Brockmans.
After we stop the tape, I'll tell you a little bit about the Brockman family now. Uh-huh.
And he asked Jimmy to take the paper over.
To run the paper. Uh-huh.
Gave it to him.
Gave it to him.
Because he wanted to go back in the oil business.
And so Jimmy left the railway. Or
He
he did this
also-
on this, or he
He
did it on the
also
side.
worked, well, this before he went in the service. He worked for Barbara Levinson's father,
Okay.
Bubba Lind, selling paper. He grew up. You know, Jimmy was a child of the Depression. His family starved. Really. And they lived in what they call Murder Incorporated. One night,
Called what?
where Murder Incorporated started.
Oh.
One night they knocked him. My mother-in-law was a fighter, and she brought up, boy, she said, "Don't you fight! Don't you dare move from this yard if I tell you." But one night they knocked at her door, and she said, "You bloody bastard, get away from there, or I'll cut your throat." Well, she was going to protect her children. But she was a human dynamo. She was the tops, and so I can't begin to tell you how important she was to the paper.
So Jimmy came back from the service. He joined the paper and then took it over. And
He worked for the Railway Mail Service. He had a job when he came back.
He had the job. Uh-huh. And did he give up the Railway Mail Service when he went with the paper?
Yeah, he had
Yes. And you went with the paper as well?
to. No, I worked for the government.
You stayed with the government? Mm-hmm.
And we stayed in that apartment Linda was born in. Brought Linda home from the hospital to that apartment.
And then where did you move after the apartment?
My mother-in-law found us the house on South Adams.
And you moved before Steve was born?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We had our office in the house. We built a room on the back of our house there.
That you had for your office. That was nice for you. And
Unfortunately, we put a screened-in porch on the back without a door.
Oh, so people had to walk through the house to get to the office. And your other 4 children were born while you were living in your house.
In Fort Worth?
Yes.
In Hildring?
Yes.
We moved into Hildring when I was pregnant with Susan.
With Susan. Oh, so you moved again. Uh-huh.
Yeah, 3 times.
Uh-huh.
From the shanty to South Adams to Hildring because, we used to drive every Sunday, and I would say, honey, please, let's leave. He says, I absolutely will not buy a house until I can afford to pay for it. And that's what we did.
And what was it like raising your children in Fort Worth?
Oh, piece of cake.
Piece of cake. Uh-huh. What were you active with in Fort Worth?
Not many things. I was a member of everything. But I worked all the time.
And
I worked Saturdays and Sundays. We would drop our children off at Sunday school, and they would wait on the steps for us to pick them up because we were at the office.
And after you moved into your second house, did you have the office at the house, or by then the office had moved?
The big house on Hildring?
Yes.
No, you did not have it there.
And did you do your...
But I added on to the house after Jimmy died because we didn't have a master bedroom. It was, when you built houses, it was different. It was different.
So how long did you stay in Fort Worth after Jimmy died?
Not too long.
Not too long, but you added on thinking you would stay, and then you decided to move to Dallas.
Yeah.
And when the children were in religious school, did they go to the Reform to Bethel, or were they...
Both.
They went to both. And
Kids were, Steve was bat mitzvah at the show, and Sharon was bat mitzvah at the show, but she was also confirmed at the temple.
okay. So you all were active with both, and you said you were a member of many of the Jewish organizations.
Almost all of them.
And did your family celebrate Jewish holidays?
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
Big time.
Mm-hmm.
Big Seder's with 40 people, and big dinners on Rosh Hashanah evening, and lunch on Rosh Hashanah day. And for breakfast, I'd have 50 or 70 people. Whoever didn't have a place, come.
That's nice. That's nice. And so you had the newspaper, and it was serving both Dallas and Fort Worth. Is that correct?
Yeah, mostly Fort Worth, because at the beginning, Dallas did not want a paper.
They did not want a Jewish newspaper.
Jack Kravitz. Do you remember Jack Kravitz? He was definitely opposed.
Who was Jack Kravitz?
He was a Federation director.
And he
was opposed to it.
And why was he opposed to a Jewish paper?
I don't know what his reasoning was, but he was opposed to it.
Were the two cities close?
Of course.
Of course.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I remember one year I sent him plant for something, and he refused it.
Now, did you...
He refused it.
What kinds of activities did your children participate in growing up?
Everything. Young Judea, BBYO, whatever.
Whatever.
BBG, ACA. Judy was president of the Temple Youth. Everything.
Did your family experience any anti-Semitism in Fort Worth?
Mm-mm.
No.
No.
why don't we pause for just a minute?
Are you getting what you want?
Absolutely.
I'd like to hear more.
Okay, well, we've taken a little break, and you just said something that I'd like to have on tape about the Hildebrand house and your Hildring, I'm sorry, house, and you were saying there were so many Jewish families on the street that it was called something about Bagel Bend, because of all the Jewish families. That's very cute. I'd like to hear more about how the newspaper grew.
Well, it started as a monthly,
Oh, okay.
and you had to be a semi-weekly to join the American Jewish Press. And of course, we evolved into a weekly.
Okay, what was the American Jewish Press?
American Jewish Press, AJ, American Jewish Press.
Okay, you wanted to be part of of a larger organization.
Right. And my husband's a past president.
Okay.
And in fact, he went to Iran with Kissinger.
Oh.
And Nixon. President Nixon.
So it started as a monthly and became semi-monthly, so twice a month,
and
so you could join the American Jewish Press.
Right.
And then when did it become a weekly paper?
I'd have to look it up.
Oh, a long time ago.
Long time ago.
Uh-huh.
Long time ago.
And how did the paper grow? Did it start as just a couple of pages? Because now I know there are at least 20 pages.
8 pages were a lot.
Did you write it yourselves, or did you have reporters?
We had some people. We belonged to JTA. We did both.
Mm-hmm.
I did a lot. I did a lot of different things.
Okay, but you personally had a lot of different roles.
I did the billing.
Uh-huh.
I did the addressograph, stamp the papers.
Uh-huh.
What else?
So you mailed the papers out. You never hand-delivered in Fort Worth?
Never. Unless there was a personal request. Somebody didn't get their paper.
Mm-hmm.
No.
And how did the circulation grow?
It grew. Not as much as we like.
Well, I'm sure that's always the case.
Yeah. But Jim used to say he never lost any money. He was shrewd.
So he was a good businessman.
Oh. And he graduated from TCU on the GI Bill and went to graduate school.
And what did he get his degree in?
He couldn't get it in journalism. He got it in history.
Okay.
Because he had the paper.
So he had come back and was working and went to school at the same time.
Working, went to night school.
Mm-hmm. That's great. And how did you define your role versus his role?
I was very insignificant in comparison to him.
I have a feeling that you're very modest.
No, but he was the brains, and he was shrewd. He was smart.
How many years were you married?
58, I think.
That's wonderful. That's really, really wonderful.
But we never called each other Greenie or Jimmy. I was always Honey.
Honey.
And he called me Honey. But we had a good marriage.
That's wonderful to hear. When you have your children been involved in the newspaper?
Growing up,
Uh-huh.
they used to work at, when we had a print shop, She would have put up with leads and slugs. They all had a part of it.
And then now Sharon runs the paper, is that correct?
Absolutely, completely.
How did that happen? How did that evolve?
Jimmy died, and I was devastated with what was going on. His desk was littered. I can't begin to tell you. He had no knowledge of if he had money or if he didn't have or anything. My nephew came from Boston, and my nephew hadn't been here for years, but my niece had, his sister, and she said, "Bob, you've got to go." And they came, and they went through the desk. They went through the desk. It took them a week or two to just clear it. I could see them. We had a print of the remains of the print shop. A stone, big stone, you know.
And what was the stone?
Where you make the paper up.
Oh, where you make the paper.
You put the frame on it.
Uh-huh.
You know, before and it's a thing. You cast the type on what do they call it? It's a linotype. Linotype.
Okay. Uh-huh.
And it comes out in a bar.
So this was when did you stop this kind of type and move to something more modern?
Well, after he was threatened by, it was I guess we started soon after, but you know, we had some experiences at the paper.
What kind of experiences you
Well,
said?
someone threatened to kill him, and said stay, and this man worked for us, and I had found him a place to live through the Jewish agency.
And he threatened you. He
Threatened Jimmy because he only wanted to work nights,
oh,
so he could get out at night. And Jimmy wasn't happy. He said, "Step outside and I'll take care of you." He was put in jail. He served 2 sentences.
for threatening.
Yeah.
But you don't feel that was anti-Semitism, or it was more just a person
I think it was a
who was
disturbing
unbalanced?
personality.
I see. And
I can honestly say I don't ever remember running into anti-Semitism.
so when Jimmy died and your niece and nephew came to help, the desk needed to be,
They cleared up.
they had to clear up the
And
desk.
they did, and today Bob handles all my financial affairs, everything.
From the Boston area.
Yeah, he teaches at the Boston University, I think.
Uh-huh.
Or Boston College. He's a
Uh-huh.
professor.
So he's taken over your financial affairs,
Uh-huh.
and then
And then I say to him, I say, "Call him Bob, am I still solvent?
Yeah.
Am I still okay?"
it's comforting to know that you are, I'm sure. And so
Because I do a lot of things for my children.
that's wonderful to do, to be able to.
Not as much as I'd like to do.
I know that you have been so generous with the community as well. So Jimmy died, and was Sharon working with you all in the paper business
She
at that
worked
time?
on the paper.
She had worked on the
Yes.
paper.
And Sharon had graduated from, she got a bachelor's, and where did she go to school? Not Stevens, Linda went to Stevens. She went to St. Louis.
Washington University?
Washington University.
I went to Washington University too.
And then she got a bachelor's there, and she almost finished her doctorate.
Oh.
And, oh my God, Jimmy wanted her to finish it. It would have made him so happy. And I said to her, she whacked such a little bit. And I said to her yesterday, Sharon, why don't you do it? It would make Dad's. She said, Mom, I don't need it.
What was her field that she was
Social work.
in? Social work at the Brown School there. So
And she taught at UTA.
and so she taught, but now she's running the paper. And when did you move the operations from Fort Worth to Dallas?
Oh, we did mostly everything in Fort Worth. We always had an office here.
An office here, even.
Yeah.
And so it's only been in the last 10 years or so that Sharon's
Really.
taken over.
Yeah.
Do you still have the office in Fort Worth?
Yeah.
Yes. And what's it like for you living in Dallas now?
Well, it's perfect for me because there's my children, my grandchildren. What could be better?
It sounds like you're able to see your family often.
Oh my gosh. There's always somebody.
Have you gotten involved in the Jewish community here since you've been here, or you're busy with the family?
I tried the community center, and I wasn't happy. I still belong.
And do you belong to a synagogue here?
Sheryl. That's the story of my life.
Well, it's a wonderful, wonderful story, and I'm very honored that you've shared with us today. As you're thinking back over, is there anything else that you think that you would like to share with us today?
It's just what a wonderful person Jimmy Wisch was.
Well, I think that you're very modest because I know he was a wonderful person, but you're a wonderful person
hard.
too.
I did work hard, but nothing. No, you couldn't compare it.
Well,
I don't have the education that he had, that he worked for, that he strived for,
well, we're
or the
very
business acumen that he had.
well, we're very honored to hear about your life and your life with Jimmy and with your family, and we thank you very much for this opportunity
It was my
to
pleasure.
share with you that you've shared with us today.